What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripe Show. We're getting about 2 weeks away from opening day. A lot of the questions that we had about how the Yankees roster was going to shake out, I think have been mostly answered now that Correa signed with Minnesota, Story signed with the Red Sox, and some other pieces have been traded or seemingly not going to be traded. And I want to start the show, Scott, just talking about how it really does seem like a bulk of Yankees fans have a lot of negative feelings towards this offseason. And maybe that's skewed because when I say bulk of Yankees fans, I'm mainly talking about like Twitter interactions that I'm having, which might be unfair because I think there's a good portion of our audience that is probably not on Twitter, doesn't give a shit about Twitter. Like, good for you guys. Like, don't create an account if you don't have one. But so there's generally younger people on Twitter, people maybe Logan's age. We just talked about before the show, was 6 years old in 2009, so let that sink in. But it's just like, it seems like people think this is a complete disaster of an offseason. And while, again, I'll repeat, I don't think that this is a spectacular offseason, it's not fair to say this is a complete disaster of an offseason, in my opinion.
I've been on Reddit a whole lot recently.
Oh boy, Reddit.
I've been on Reddit a lot recently, just trying to look at just other conversations that are happening around the Yankees as well. And I think that a couple things. There's definitely a split. I've put some tweets out here there that people have responded to and talked about how the offseason isn't what people are making it out to be. I think that because the Yankees, and this is similar vibe to when Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were free agents. I think when you have large free agents that are going to sign somewhere, that are all-star caliber players, that everybody in the Yankees world expects the Yankees to sign one of them. And when that doesn't happen, the Yankees are cheap. The Yankees aren't trying. The Yankees aren't doing what they need to. The Yankees aren't this or that. And while I agree with it to some point, I think that it's kind of an exhausted narrative because if you look at this team, I mean, they've been putting out, Cashman's been talking about recently, this is the highest payroll we've gone out. He's not wrong. It's so whether you agree with the way that the money is being spent or the fact that they're not spending money, those are two different things. They didn't go after these large long-term contracts. I'm fine with that, to be honest. Like what they did is they addressed what they started to address in the middle of last year at the trade deadline. They took another step, I'd say. That's kind of, it was almost like a continuation of that, because what they were doing at that point is identifying that they had some holes in the roster and they tried to address them, it seems like, best they could in the middle of the season. And I'd say that they did address some things, some addition by subtraction, not sexy names, but they clearly are valuing defense over offense with the moves that they made. I think that's one of the biggest things. And if you don't agree with that philosophy, given the contracts that they have, then that's a different story. But they're still paying Giancarlo Stanton a good amount. He's actually a bargain when you look at the contracts coming out that have come out here.
The Marlins are paying like a third of his salary.
Yeah,
so.
You look at
he's
a
like
guy
the best value on the team.
A guy like IKF, and I hear, and I know we're going to talk about Correa and what he signed for, because I think that changes
That's why people
the narrative a little bit here. Who knows what those conversations were like? Who knows who was serious about which team, or if the Yankees were serious about them, or if the off the field stuff was important to them and they considered that more than they're alluding to. So I think there's a number of considerations here. I, for one, am happy with the way that this team looks right now, to be honest. They could be improvement. They can improve in certain areas. There's no doubt about it. The catching situation is a big question mark, but I do believe that they think that Higgy can be a starting catcher and is their guy. I believe that.
But even that, Rortvet is gonna have to figure out that one as the season goes along. Oblique injury, so he's likely not.
But they knew that, right? He came over with that, so that leads me down the path of they're very comfortable with Higgy being the starting catcher.
Okay, so. But the catching depth, I think, is a little bit of a concern. Not a huge concern, because I'm still of the opinion that removing Gary Sanchez from the equation is actually a net positive. The rotation, I think, is also a concern. Not a huge concern, but I would love to see another middle of the rotation arm for depth. because obviously Garrett Cole, you can count on him for 30 starts. I think health-wise, you can count on Jordan Montgomery for 30 starts. That's 60 starts. You have to make up 100 starts out of Severino, Jameson Taillon, Nestor Cortez, and then depth options like Michael King and Clark Schmidt, maybe Devi Garcia, Luis Heel, and whoever else you want to call up from Scranton. That's a lot of starts, 100, to get out of guys that all have question marks of varying degrees attached to them. So that's where my concerns with the rotation comes in.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that that's a valid concern. I think that they're looking at their depth in AAA, and a guy like Nestor Cortez and the ability to lean on a stronger bullpen, similar to what they did 2 years ago, is what they're looking at. But for sure, I mean, injuries are going to be a concern. I don't know. There could have been moves to be made, I think, to solidify the starting rotation more. I think that's definitely an area that you could press on. And there, again, I still think that there's still available trade options with that too. And maybe they're looking at that for midseason, or maybe there's still something coming up. So I don't think they're finished, whether it's at the end of this spring training or going into the break. Like, I think they will spend money, but they're spending money.
No, spending the money, the $250 million, yeah, that's it's a huge payroll. No one's arguing that. I think people are questioning the allocation of that payroll.
Josh Donaldson scratches your head, makes you scratch your head.
See, okay, you added Josh Donaldson to go over the next threshold of luxury tax, and then you stop there. Like, people, that's not a sexy thing. That's not a sexy move for people. And then they see Correa sign with the Twins, who just offloaded Donaldson's money. They start to create this narrative that Cashman and the Yankees got played by the Twins and this whole thing. And they think, well, wouldn't it be perfect for Correa to have signed with the Yankees on a short-term deal with opt-outs, basically a series of one-year deals based on his liking, if you're waiting for the next shortstop in Volpe to come up? Like, yeah, on the face of it, that makes sense. But then there was also reports that the Yankees never discussed that 3-year option contract with Correa. A 4-year deal was discussed, but very briefly. And also, I didn't want Correa on this team, okay? You have to think about things other than just statistically, is he going to help this roster? Because he's an a-hole, and no one in that locker room likes him. That has to be considered. Seager was the prototypical move. If you were going to sign a long-term shortstop, it was going to be Corey Seager. Once that didn't happen, I didn't see Baez, Trevor Story, Carlos Correa fitting onto this roster. I would have loved Freddie Freeman. Everyone knows I would have loved Freddie Freeman. He didn't want to come to the Yankees, reportedly, okay? Like you said on the last episode, you can only do so much when someone doesn't want to play in your city. Yeah, so it didn't happen.
It takes two to tango. The conversation with Correa also changed once the Yankees made that trade with Minnesota. I understand that. If Minnesota had that, that play and that was what they were going for the entire time, like, good for them. Yeah.
Good for them.
Good for them, because they played it beautifully if that was the case. But at that time, when they're having that conversation with Correa and then they're looking at another option of adding what they believe, again, you got to get yourselves in the mind of like what they actually think, whether you agree with it or not. They believe that Donaldson is an upgrade at third base. They agreed that IKF was a better option for this roster, given the money and the years and the flexibility, than going 4 or 5 years with a Correa. Clearly, they didn't want to spend this. What did Seager end up signing? Was it a 10-year?
Seager got 10 years, like $320 million.
Yeah. So Seager, you're right, was the fit for this team. There's no doubt. Like, he was, he
lefty
can
bat,
play defense, lefty bat. Like, he was the guy that made a lot of sense for this roster. I would say that Story was probably the closer one as well, because the Correa piece, there is an off the field issue there. Like, you want to ignore that. Everybody wants to ignore that like it's not a thing, but it's actually a thing. It's real. It is a real thing.
It has to be. What did we come up with like a few months ago? The common sense department. Like, who's in the? Get me someone in that front office that's just like, hey, let's look at some other things than just the stats on if this person's going to work on the Yankees. Like, happened with Sonny Gray, couldn't handle New York. It's happened with other players that just haven't been able to handle it. Maybe Correa could handle it. He seems like a cocky enough guy to be able to handle the New York media. But there's other things that he was going to have to handle. And what if Judge, and and
Yeah, what
Stanton
if
and all
they're
the
like, I
other
don't want that
guys
guy
in
on
the
my
locker
team?
room. Exactly. If you go around the locker room, I'm sure Garrett Cole, who played with Carlos Correa, might have had some things to say on if he's.
I know exactly what that
not.
MF did. I know exactly what that guy did. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Like all of these things, all of these conversations happen. We just don't know them. We don't know what the context of these conversations, but they happened. I guarantee they happened.
And Story signs with the Red Sox. It was interesting towards right before he signed, there were reports, the Red Sox are in on him to play second base. And then wheels got spinning in Yankees fans' heads, and they're like, oh, well, if the Yankees can trade Gleyber Torres, sign Trevor Story to play second base, then DJ can still be the backup second baseman, backup first baseman, backup third baseman. Maybe that's something that they do. And that gives them also insurance at shortstop, because Story could slide over to shortstop if IKF is having a bad season or if he gets hurt or something like that. Because right now, who's your backup shortstop on this roster? It's Gleyber Torres. No one feels good about that.
No, not at all, for sure. That's, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a journeyman guy added at some point for defense, but yeah.
And so Story gets 6 years from the Red Sox. I don't love that contract if I'm the Yankees. If you're just thinking long-term, which I understand if you don't want to do because you want the World Series in 2022, I completely get that. The window is, if you want to even say the window is still open, like the thing is being held up with duct tape at this point.
I don't even know what the window is because all the players are completely different at this point.
The window is...
All our 2017 hope was gone.
No. The window is this. Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton in their primes. Okay, that's the window. It's winning with those guys in their primes. And you have probably this in the next 2 to 3 years to do that. Okay? So if you're saying what gives us the maximum opportunity to win in 22, 23, 24, yeah, it's sign Trevor Story or sign Carlos Correa. It's not bring in IKF, okay? I get that. But what bringing in IKF does, and then the Josh Donaldson 2-year situation, not locking yourself into a long-term first baseman with Rizzo, I think I saw in our chat, Logan and Ilya posted, like the Yankees payroll is projected to be like $100 million under the tax in 2 years. Now, I'm not someone who is like super concerned about Hal Steinbrenner's budget, okay? He could spend $500 million on the team every year, and the New York Yankees franchise would still make money, okay? Because it's a juggernaut. But they are looking at it like it's a business. They are looking at it like it's a budget, okay? And I'm not going to fool myself again because it's happened twice already. Oh, the Yankees are resetting the luxury tax so they can sign Manny Machado and Bryce Harper. The Yankees are resetting things so they can be in on all the big shortstops. Guess what? None of those happened. But this roster is not allocated smartly, okay? There's way too much money at the back end of the bullpen, one of which isn't going to play this year in Zach Britton. You are going to lock up Aaron Judge, whether it happens before the season starts or it happens at the end of the year. Aaron Judge is going to make $30+ million a year, and he's going to be on this roster. So the allocation of the roster has to be taken into account, and it was just poorly allocated, and we saw where it led them, and it's to this place.
You can look backwards though too, and people were mad about about not going after Harper and Machado, but I've said this before on multiple shows. The Yankees made a choice. They were not going to go after them because they had the opportunity to get Stanton. They chose Stanton over those guys. They chose one of the three guys, and they chose Mike Stanton. They chose Giancarlo Stanton.
That's a throwback. Mike Stanton. He hasn't been Mike Stanton since like 2012. Yeah, they chose Stanton at $22 million versus Harper. Even though Harper, didn't he only sign for like $25 million AAV? That Harper contract.
He signed for like 19 years.
I know he did. But that Harper contract, when you think about it, if you take Stanton off, I could see that working out because AAV wise, it's not crazy. And they said we'll have Stanton at $22 million versus the potential of Harper or Machado for bigger money. Whether that's the right move or not, like that's up for debate. I don't know.
You look back though, and you look at the numbers and the guys that they signed, and yeah, I mean it's actually worked. It's worked. It's a value. Harper's a damn good player. Machado's definitely not the same guy that everybody thought he was, I think. So the value of what they're getting for Stanton is clearly well and above both of those guys, just for the amount of dollars that they're paying him. We'll see what happens at the end of this contract for him and how long he can sustain the health and be at a top form. But it looks good now. Whereas, 2 years ago, people were bitching about it completely, but you look back now and it looks good. It does, of the three players.
A popular thing that's been going around Yankee social this week is the options that they could have had this offseason. And they're comparing, okay, for the dollars they spent, option one, they could have signed Correa to $35.1 million. Gleyber Torres is on the roster at $4 million. LeMahieu's on the roster at $15 million. They would have maybe kept Sanchez and Voit at $8 and $6 million respectively. Or maybe you could offload some Voit's money or Sanchez's money. But I don't see how that happens if you're not doing the Donaldson IKF trade. Option one total, $68 million. The big thing is obviously Correa. Or option two is what they did. Donaldson, IKF, Torres, Rizzo, LeMahieu at $63 million. The money's roughly the same. The big thing that I saw people missing was that Sanchez being removed from the roster was clearly a priority in the Donaldson money. Okay, they agreed, yeah, we'll take on Donaldson's 22 or 25 million a year salary if you take Gary Sanchez's 8 million a year salary. Yes, I know you're adding payroll, but it's not like they were going to take on Donaldson and keep Sanchez. That was never a possibility. So the option is really, would you have rather had Correa and Gio on the left side of the infield, if that was even on the table, or what they have now, which is Donaldson, IKF. I mean, obviously, Correa, yeah, no one's arguing Correa is the best player out of all of them, okay? But again, for all the reasons we said, might not have fit with this team.
And the contract may not have been close to what was actually signed either. So that's the other piece of this is a fantasy because we're not sure. Timing does matter in free agency and how things line up, and it just may not have been available like that. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at on the field, just on the field, then you could make the argument that the Correa option is a better option. Like he's the best player of those people. Right. There's no doubt. Nobody's arguing that. But the salary thing for Gary Sanchez, the $8 million, that's a piece of this. But also just having Gary Sanchez not on this lineup and not catching the pitchers that didn't want to throw to him, also an addition by subtraction in their eyes. That was part of the equation.
At some point last year, Cole, obviously, Tyon, because he's, buddy with Cole, and Corey Kluber all preferred not to throw to Gary Sanchez. When 3/5 of the rotation prefers not to throw to a guy, it's time to move on, unfortunately. And it was time to move on from Gary Sanchez. I think, though, what they did this offseason puts a tremendous amount of pressure on Anthony Volpe working out. And now MLB Pipeline just came out with some new rankings. He's number 8 in Major League Baseball Top 100. Number 8 prospect in the league. But if he is not an all-star, like future all-star, perennial all-star level shortstop, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs looking back on this offseason criticizing what the Yankees decided to do.
I mentioned that I've been dabbling on Reddit a little bit more too. I posted something on there and I asked if you would give up a package including Volpe, and here I'm going to go back to my guy because I'm mildly obsessed because he's still in Cleveland, but give up a package of Volpe for 2 years of Jose Ramirez at what is it, $12 and $14 million, I think, respectively, something like that. It's very, very reasonable. And it was split. There's no doubt. I would say the majority went to the people that said, yes, I would do it. But a lot of also like, yes, but Yankees won't do it type of thing. Yes, but he's hyped up this much. We're going to see what he gets. But if you're looking as a baseball fan for the next 2 years and you're banking on Volpe, I know that he could be the next, quote, Derek Jeter. He could be the next guy, right? He could be. I mean, that's the type of pressure he's. I mean, that's what we're looking at. He's a New Jersey kid coming up with he's got the shortstop label on him. He's got a number that's under 20 that he picked he's able to wear, which I think was something. And yeah, for me, I don't. He's not even played in Double A yet, right? So this year will be a big year for him to see what he really is, I think, and to see if he can stay within that ranking system. But Jose Ramirez for 2 years is a top 5 hitter. He's a top 5 player. Like, he is a dynamic hitter that changes your team. and has flexibility to move across the diamond. Like, you make room for a guy like that. And if I know I have him for 2 years, I'm thinking real hard about that. And especially understanding that there's going to be another free agent market with shortstops, given these short-term deals. You could probably go out and get a shortstop. And guess what? You're not spending money on Jose Ramirez. You're not.
You know, that's a good point. If Volpe takes a massive step back this year and IKF just is a disaster, I'm guessing Correa is going to be on the market again next year. They can have a redo if they really want to redo. Logan, can you look up the last Yankee prospect ranked in the top 10 in Major League Baseball? Like, I can't remember. I know Judge, all those guys were not ranked in the top 10 in Major League Baseball.
Was it Montero?
Might have been Jesus Montero.
Or Severino. Was Severino? Did Severino ever get that high?
I don't think Sevy ever got that high. I don't think the Yankees have had a top 10 pitching prospect ever in our lifetime.
Brian Taylor.
Brian Taylor. I mean, remember the Killer Bees, Banuelos, Betances.
Mm-hmm. Banuelos is back with the organization.
So I'm just wondering, like, is Volpe might be the highest ranked Yankee prospect in a very, very long time. Obviously, the Yankees have had prospects come up and be good. Judge is one of the best players in baseball. He was the Yankees prospect that worked out. Gary Sanchez didn't work out. Looked like he was going to work out, didn't work out. Severino, I don't think we could say at this point has been working out. He had a really good 2018 and he's been injured ever since. Clint Frazier didn't work out. Justice Sheffield didn't work out for the Yankees. So the Yankees have had everyone has had more prospects miss than hit. That's the nature of prospects, okay? You're not going to hit at a good rate. It's like the Hall of Fame. If you bat 300, you're a Hall of Fame prospect organization. So no one's doing that. But this has to work out. Volpe has to work out, or else there's going to be a lot of criticism from this offseason. And I think it will be warranted. But they clearly believe Volpe is the next perennial all-star.
It's got to be next year, too. I think it's got to be next year. Because if you're waiting too damn long, then what are we doing? Then you're wasting 2 prime years.
I think 2 years. Because I think 2 years. If Volpe is the opening day shortstop 2024, and he's good, I think people will be okay.
If he's in Double-A this year, he should absolutely be in the majors next year.
Okay, fine. He could be in the majors next year, but you're saying he's good. Like, you're saying if he comes up next year, like how Judge got called up in the middle of 2016, and he's okay. He's plays decently for a month and a half. I don't think people are going to call it a disaster then, because you have to see what he's like in his first real full season. Everyone gets their feet wet in the majors, and then we see how it translates from there. I mean, the last prospect that I can remember, Gleyber Torres, gets called up. He gets called up a month into the season because they were fudging his service time, and he was good right away. And he's
Robbie Cano.
Ever since then.
Did Cano get to top 10 status?
I don't know. Cano was good right away.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, it could absolutely work out, and it could work out, and I hope it does. I hope he's the shortstop for the next 15 years, 10 years, whatever it looks like. Because, from the prospect status and from what everybody are saying, like that is the potential for this guy. So if that's the case, then I do expect him to do well this year in Double-A, and he won't stay in Triple-A for long. He really won't. I mean, it wouldn't. So let me ask you a question. If he's burning down the gates in Double-A in the first half of the season, you're telling me they're not going to send him up to Triple-A for like 2 weeks and then send him up? Because that's what's going to happen. If IKF is struggling, it would not surprise me that we see him even this year if he's doing well in Double-A.
Yes, a lot of it depends.
I think they have nothing to lose if they do that. In that case, they should. He should learn on the job at that point.
Well, you have something to lose because you can call up a prospect too early and he gets exposed and that ruins his progression. I mean,
then he was never a real prospect.
That's not true.
Yes,
that's not true at all.
Yes, it is.
That's a little unfair.
Not if he's doing well in Double-A. If he's doing well in Double-A, goes for a cup of coffee in Triple-A, there's no reason to keep him in Triple-A at that point.
What
if there's an opening?
Really well?
Again, this is all contingent on an opening if somebody is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Or let's say Donaldson gets hurt and IKF has to play third, or whatever the situation may be. If someone is not struggling within there and there needs to be a shift, you can't move Gleyber to short for a long period of time. So Peraza might be the one that's ahead of him as far as development. So he very well might be the guy first.
Because they are cautious. they are conscious of calling up prospects too early and stunting their development. Maybe they're overly cautious in some senses. But if IKF is hitting 215 in June and they call up Volpe, it's going to be the savior has arrived. And if he's not immediately an impact player, people are going to be like, well, what the F did we do last offseason? And they're conscious of that.
Well, it doesn't seem like they're too conscious of it because they made the decision to move forward with him. He is the future as of today. He is the future at shortstop. There's no doubt about it. IKF has the ability to play in multiple positions. Won a Gold Glove at third base. I didn't even realize this, but when Ilya and Logan were talking about it in the chat, like I didn't realize he had 70 games at catcher on the major league level. I didn't realize that. Like the guy has the flexibility to move around. He's clearly a ball player and can play in multiple places. He doesn't need to be entrenched as the shortstop for long term for him to be a valuable player on this team at all.
He's going to be an emergency catcher probably for the Yankees, but don't expect him to play catcher.
I'm not saying he's the catcher, but I'm saying he could go to second, he could go to third. He's got the flexibility to move around the infield.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying I've seen people also saying, oh, IKF can be a backup catcher to Higgy to start the season. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. I think they want to have IKF focus on shortstop. I don't see him shifting to catcher once a week or anything like that.
And that's fine. I mean, kid grew up a Yankees fan, like there's a lot of things to like there.
Checking the boxes.
He's he's checking the boxes. He's shaving.
He posted that Bleacher Creature photo of him from back in the day. He was out in the right field bleachers. Yeah. So far, IKF has had a tremendous start to his Yankees career. It's like if you're drawing up the PR department in the Yankees are like, okay, you do these three things, right? You post a video of you shaving. Then you dig up an old picture of you, like how Garrett Cole did, of being a Yankees fan from when you were 7 years old. That's going to endear you to Yankee fans. And then when any reporter asks you about anything, just talk about winning. Just talk about how you want to win. And then boom, that's
nothing
the trifecta.
Matters but postseason. Nothing matters but postseason.
Luke Voit traded to the Padres for pitching prospect Justin Lang. He's a former first-round pick, apparently touched 102 on the gun. A lot of people were maybe expecting the Yankees to get a bigger haul for Luke Voit. I don't understand why. He's a one-dimensional first baseman. Is he a good offensive player? Yeah, but he's also a one-dimensional first baseman, and those just don't get a lot on the trade market. I actually think them getting a lottery ticket pitching prospect is about the best that you could hope for in trading Luke Voit, especially when the Yankees have no leverage, right? They signed Rizzo. The Padres are sitting there like, Voit has no place on your roster. You're going to give him to us for this or nothing.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I think I don't know enough about the prospect to think, I know he was a recent first-round pick, so clearly he was well-regarded and thought of, and from the things that I've read, yeah, he's just a little raw. Like there's definitely the ability there, and the kid could absolutely be something. So I think that was good value, and it's fine. You're right, like you said, bag of balls, like it would have been fine. That's disrespectful to Luke Voit. He's worth more than that, but the Yankees didn't fit the roster in what they were doing. So they went out and got the best prospect, and they got a prospect with a first-round grade and a pitcher. So that's all good. I mean, I'm happy with that haul. I think Logan's got some info on prospect.
Yeah, so I have the answer to your question. In 2017, Gleyber Torres was the third-ranked prospect in all of baseball.
Oh wow, I didn't realize.
And was fifth in 2018 before he came up. So that would be the highest. You guys referenced Jesus Montero. He was 19th in 2010 and 9th in 2011. And then he also was 12th in 2012. I saw Gary Sanchez made an appearance at 32 in 2011, which is crazy considering how long he's been in the
organization for as long as you've been alive, Logan.
He's 16 years old.
Literally. And then a fun name on this list, Jorge Mateo was 30th in baseball in 2016.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see how that one panned out.
He's still playing baseball. I give Jorge Mateo credit. That man is still making a living playing baseball. He's playing the outfield now. He was with a bunch of different. Good for him. Like he's still living the dream.
Yeah, and Banuelos who's back with the Yankees, was 13 in 2012. Judge and Severino were in the top 35 at different points over the last 10 years. But other than that, Gleyber was really that high, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also a thing with prospect rankings is that age is obviously taken into a factor. So Judge went to college. He played 4 years in college. So he was always an older prospect, and that's always taken into account. Same thing as we've been talking in our chat with that baseball trade values website. I really love that website. It's really cool. But as people post more of these things on social and be like, hey, they could get this for this. It's like that website values prospects way higher than any major league talent because major league talent is making major league salary and it takes salary into account. It's like I was looking up values. Garrett Cole's value is like 19 on that website. And then if you look up like some other pitchers who are 1/10 the talent level of Garrett Cole but are on rookie deals or something, their value is like 11. And it's like, well, what's something is not adding up here? Yeah, it's because Garrett Cole makes $36 million a year. That's why the value, quote unquote, to an organization is what it is. Just, a little aside as we're talking about potential trades. Yankees might be in on someone from Oakland or something like that. Just the prospects are always going to be ranked higher. The thing with Voit is not that he was bad. It's just he was redundant. Okay, he was redundant on this team and in this lineup, and the writing was on the wall. They had to move on from him. I also saw a report the Yankees are shopping Miguel Andujar. Poor Miguel Andujar. Like, legitimately forgot he was on the roster. It's been 4 years since he was on this team and playing. That was 2018, his rookie year. 2019, he gets hurt in the first week of the season, and we haven't seen him since.
What was the trade that was turned down? Was it for Garrett Cole in Pittsburgh?
Clint
and it was
Frazier and Miguel
Andujar?
Yeah. Frazier and Andujar for Garrett Cole prior to the 2018 season.
Whoops.
Yeah, I'd like a do-over on that one.
Whoops. Yeah, again, remember thinking that all the speculation is actually true and like conversations happened the way that they happened through, whoever's reporting that. But
Look at Devi Garcia. Right? No one wanted to trade Devi Garcia for anything in the year that he was called up, and now he's not even sniffing top 10 in the Yankees system. Never mind in Major League Baseball. Could he still be a solid pitcher at the Major League level? Sure, I'm not going to rule that out. But that's the fickle nature of these prospects. So when we're talking about Volpe, things can change on a dime.
Yes, they can.
He has a bad season this year, and he's not ranked next year. Okay, that's how quickly it can change.
No, absolutely, and that's the gamble with all these guys, and that's why prospect hugging is not a great strategy to have. Yes, you need to develop, but you're still playing a numbers game when you're messing with the minor leagues. And the Yankees are just in a position where they are spending this much money. Banking on a kid to come up is part of their strategy, I think, to get cheaper, but it's also a big risk for him being the player they think he is.
MLB Network put out, they do the top 10 at each position. It's they use the Shredder, which is like a proprietary algorithm or something that the MLB Network uses to come up with their top 10 lists, and caught a lot of Yankees' attention because the top 10 third baseman had Josh Donaldson as the 5th best third baseman in baseball. And people are thinking like, what, Josh Donaldson? Yeah, maybe if we're talking 2016 when he's winning MVPs, he's a top 5 third baseman, but now. And then you look at the numbers, and I think 5 for Donaldson's a little high, but he's in the conversation in top 10. Their list was Jose Ramirez, your guy, clearly best third baseman, Rafael Devers, Alex Bregman. I think those 3 are really the elite of the elite third baseman. I would actually probably rank Bregman at number 2 over Devers, although Devers is pretty great. Justin Turner, then Josh Donaldson, Anthony Rendon, Manny Machado, Nolan Arenado, Yohan Moncada, Chris Bryant as rounds out the top 10. And then you start looking at the numbers and the projections. Donaldson's ZiPS projections for 2022 are a 119 WRC plus, which I actually think might be low, and 3.2 WAR. And that's pretty much in line with Justin Turner, with Arenado, with Chris Bryant. So while I don't think Josh, I would not say if I'm drafting these third basemen, I'm not taking Donaldson 5th. I might be taking him 7th or 8th. The Yankees massively upgraded their third base position. Last year, their third base production ranked 17th in Major League Baseball. had 2.2 WAR and a 90 WRC+. Gio had a good start to the season, but then he got injured and he had a really bad second half. And then when he started to play shortstop, he was not good, okay? He was not a shortstop, clearly, but he was just still injured. So the Yankees' third base production ranked 17th in Major League Baseball. Big caveat, if Josh Donaldson is healthy, they're going to rank a lot higher than 17th, I can tell you that.
Donaldson's one of these guys that, again, we talked about this. He's hated if he's on another team. He's a different type of hate. He's a pest. He's one of these guys who gets under your skin. But everything you're hearing about, and these are the type of conversations and interviews I actually listen to, is like, hey, what is your interaction with the team? Hey, what are you doing? How's the thing? And he's talking about that. He's talking like just a lot of baseball conversations with Aaron Judge, and they're just like getting in the weeds of like how to play. He's an addict. He's one of these guys who just loves and is addicted to baseball and to the mechanics and the game itself. Like he's a lifer baseball guy. And yes, he's a pain in the ass, and I hated him when he was not on the team. But he's also the kind of guy that are like, all right, now that asshole's on our team, that's a good thing. And yes, if he's healthy, he's a dynamic bat. There's no doubt he's a dynamic bat, and he can play third base. So it is an upgrade. It is an upgrade. He's a legit bat that will. I hate throwing the caveat of healthy, because you could say that about every single player on the roster, but he's a dynamic guy, and he mashes the ball. Like he mashes the ball. And that's a good thing. And guess what? The dynamic of the lineup has changed. It's just changed. And that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. So for everybody saying that this team is the same, it is not the same. It is not the same. First of all, we have different look. That's just good. Like aesthetics, it's different. Plus, that's a plus for I think everybody watching. We don't have to roll out the exact same people. So just different people makes it different first and foremost. But they have different skill sets also. And they have different skill sets that are complementary to other people on the team. And that is such an important piece to building on-field chemistry. And I think it's downplayed and not given enough consideration in the eyes of some fans. But for a winning baseball team, you better damn well have complementary players that have skill sets that are able to be paired with it. And you're not just a one-trick pony all the way through 1 through 9. And that's not what this team is.
Yeah, something was broken with the team last year, really the last 2+ years. And you looked at the stats, and I think they ranked top 7 or 8 in on-base percentage and bottom 10 in runs scored. And usually, like those two things, you're getting on base, you're putting a lot of traffic on the bases, to borrow the Aaron Boone term. Good things are going to happen. Good things were not happening with that Yankee lineup, okay? So the construction was broken, and it needed a change. When I was thinking about the opening day lineup possibilities, and I how is the lineup going to look? Who's going to start? What is the alignment going to be? I would personally start LeMahieu at second base. I don't know if that means Gleyber is on the bench or if he's DHing. That entirely depends, I think, on Giancarlo Stanton. But I don't think handing Gleyber Torres the quote-unquote second base job, he has not earned that. Now, maybe they'll do it because they're worried about his fragile ego, and that if he's riding the pine on opening day, it's going to derail his whole season, which I think is a real concern with someone like Gleyber Torres, which is a problem in and of itself. But I would go LeMahieu at second, Judge in right, Rizzo at first, Stanton at DH, Donaldson at third, Gallo in left, Hicks in center, IKF at short, and Higgy at 9. And then I like the balance of that lineup if those are the 9 starters. Now, maybe Hicks sits, Stanton and Gallo and Judge are in the outfield, and then you can DH Gleyber, or you can DH Donaldson and move DJ over to third. Like, there's a lot of possibilities. But just, I like the balance a lot better of this lineup.
Absolutely. I think it's also going to it gives the opposing team much more to think about 1 through 9 and how you're going to attack this lineup than it did last year. So right there, to me, that's a really big positive is giving them extra, giving the other team just different looks to think about. And when it comes to the postseason, that's really important. I think that's really important to have the ability to change that look up. And look, I'm not going to take a lot of stock in who's playing what position for one day of the year either, because whether they roll DJ out at second base or not.
Because look what they did with Gary Sanchez last year.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it doesn't mean a lot. It's a matter of like if you can get him the 500 at bats, LeMahieu I'm talking about during the season, then great. And I think that's still a very good possibility. I think a lot of it does hinge on how much Stanton is playing the outfield, but it's a possibility. So I don't care. I'm not going to get up in arms if DJ is not out there at second base and he comes in, in the fourth inning or fifth inning for defense, which guess what? That's probably going to happen.
Fourth inning. Yankees take a 1-0 lead in the first inning. Defense, let's go. Let's shut it down. Gun to your head, is Brett Gardner on the opening day roster?
No.
Is he on the roster at any point this season?
Possibly.
Okay, so you're thinking someone gets an injury in the outfield and Gardner doesn't even there's no phone call. It's just understood he's on the next flight to New York.
It's possible that they're using, I don't, with other reports of him not signing other places, there's definitely still a concern that he could be here. But if he's not here now and the season starts in a couple of weeks, he's an older guy. Like, he's going to need some reps to get going. And they have guys that are Brett Gardner on this roster right now.
Right.
So I don't, unless they're getting rid of LeCastro, or Lamar, like any of these guys that you see that can
Marwin Gonzalez to a minor
Marwin Gonzalez
deal.
Again, Florial could be an extra guy out there that gives you a similar type of thing. I don't see how it's going to happen unless it's forced in. There are other guys that are younger and do similar things. They need to move the clubhouse. They need to transition the clubhouse at this point. Don't bring him back. Whether you like him or not as a clubhouse guy, like there are guys that can fill this position, and we need more. If Stan's in the outfield, like it just doesn't make sense. If Stan's in the outfield more often, it doesn't make sense.
Do you think his impact on the Yankees clubhouse is a little overblown, Gardner's?
I think it's a good impact. I mean, I don't know how, is there a war for impact, clubhouse impact? I don't know. But I think it matters, but I also think that there's an opportunity for other people to step up. I think they have good veteran leadership right now. I don't think they're lacking veteran leadership. I think you bring a guy like Rizzo in for the full season and Donaldson. Immediately you're getting a clubhouse leader. Donaldson, I don't know how much he's like rah, like, clubhouse guy or just pisses people off.
No, but, I mean, I can see him being the right kind of internal agitator. Right? Like, I don't know, maybe he fights with
other people on his team too. That's happened definitely in the past. So they have to clear that hurdle first. Yeah.
Yeah. Gallo, a veteran guy who's now on the team for the full season. Judge, who's been in the league for a while now. The de facto captain. Stanton, veteran leader.
Higgy's no young buck either anymore.
Garrett Cole, pitching staff leader. Like, they've got plenty of guys. And I think with Brett Gardner, right? Like, NJ.com wrote an article about how Brett Gardner is going to be missed and how he taught some guys to be a Yankee. Part of me is like, oh, that's cool, right? Like, Brett Gardner took on that responsibility in a time when the Yankees needed it. After Jeter and Mariano and A-Rod and all those guys left the team, it was sort of Brett Gardner by default as the only one left. So he took on that responsibility, and that's cool. But then I'm like, but what did it translate to? Okay, the closest they got was 2017, and they didn't get there. Why they didn't get there, we don't know. Maybe this letter will tell us some more. Maybe this fucking letter that comes out will tell us the truth. But 2018, they were even further away. 2019, they got close again, didn't get there. 2020, I'm erasing that from my brain, okay? I'm doing the Men in Black mind eraser on the 2020 year in general.
Period.
2021, nowhere close. They were nowhere close to a championship. So we've seen this team regress with Brett Gardner as the quote-unquote leader of the clubhouse. I'm not blaming Brett Gardner, but I'm also not going to overstate his importance. Like, yeah, he was good for the clubhouse, but he wasn't like, I don't think his loss is going to mean anything.
That presence is more important in 2016, 2017 than it is today. These guys are
Sure.
veteran players at this point. There's not anybody that's coming up like immediately that's green to what's going on in the Bronx. Like, they know what's happening. They've had guys that have been on the other side and have played in New York multiple times. in their career. So I don't think you, if you're looking just at the veteran leadership point, like they have that covered now. You need to make sure that the product on the field is as good as you can possibly get. And I don't think that is with including Brett Gardner.
Another gun to your head question. Does Aaron Judge have a contract extension before opening day?
No.
Do you think they make him an offer?
I think they said they're going to, I believe, right? Or they're at least trending in that
Hal
direction.
said they're going to have talks in the next week. We don't know.
I think they're having conversations about an offer to, whether you're considering it, presenting them an offer. I think they're going to throw some numbers out there and say, where are we? And then they'll go from there. But it's got to get done before the season, right? Like I don't see them doing
That's what Judge said
during the season. Yeah.
That's what Judge
said.
That's what
everybody says.
Isn't that what Lindor said last year? And the Mets took him up on that, and then they offered him an insane contract before the season. So it worked for Lindor. I don't know if it's going to work the same for Aaron Judge. I
hope he does. I will say this. I hope he does, because he should get the contract no matter what. Why make it a distraction? Get it done now.
I agree with that. Don't make it a distraction, because it will be a distraction. Maybe it's not going to be a distraction in May and June, but come trade deadline, it might be a distraction. Come end of the season, it will definitely be a distraction, whether they win or lose in the playoffs.
I mean, it's one of the questions everybody, if he's on a podcast or somewhere else besides just the beat reporters who will see him every day, it's the first question that's asked. It's top 3 question you get from Judge. So he's going to be, going down this take a step back smile thing, just really proud to be here.
He doesn't answer any questions.
Yeah.
So, but for Judge, re-signing Judge right now to an extension does not change the 2022 Yankees outlook. So it might appease some fans, but it doesn't change my opinion on the offseason.
Well, it also entrenches him in this clubhouse and who he is. He's the guy. Without a contract, as quote lame duck, like you don't know if he's the guy. Is he the guy? Is he not the guy? Are they going to do it? Is he not?
Yeah.
Does that affect his leadership in the clubhouse? Does he feel more timid in the way that he does things because he's not sure if he's going to be here next year? I think psychologically there's a number of things that can happen there, and it's certainly in the best interest of the New York Yankees, I think, to get a deal done right now. I unequivocally, I think that's the case.
Do you think he would accept a 5-year extension that kicks in next year? So if you include this year, it's 6 total years. They would pay him his arbitration amount, which is going to be 19 million, and then 5 years at 35 million or something like that.
I think they're going to have to go beyond that. When you see
Do you think beyond that guaranteed, or beyond that with some achievable?
How old is he right now?
I believe he's 31.
He'll be 31, or he is 31. So 5-year puts him at 36, 37. Look, he's not going to get a Corey Seager 10-year deal unless they're just willing.
He turns 30 in April.
Okay, so he's 30. So this is his 30. So 36.
Just call it. This is his age 30 season.
Yeah. So I think he's going to look for. I think he's going to try to get a 7 or 8 year deal. I don't think a 10-year deal is on the table anymore. But
no, it's not.
I think a 7-year deal is on the table.
Do you think the Yankees give him a 7-year deal?
Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe just to make themselves feel better, they throw in some semi-obtainable options that kick in for that 7th and 8th year or something like that.
Well, you slot Judge into the DH spot too at a certain point,
Why?
right? So he's got multiple. No,
Why?
I'm saying for later in the career.
How?
What do you mean how?
You're paying Giancarlo Stanton until the end of time.
Well, that's true. So one of them is going to be it's a platoon DH when they're both 40 years old.
Oh, great. You're spending $45 million a year for a freaking platoon DH.
You're paying for Aaron Judge. You're paying the money for Aaron Judge is different than anybody else though, because he is the face of the franchise.
I'll tell you what, Giancarlo Stanton making $22 million in 2028 is going to be a better bargain than Aaron Judge making $35 million in 2028.
Yeah, but the amount of dollars he's making this Yankees organization by being on the team, being that guy is there's a price there. He should know that too. He does know that. Yankees know that. He's different. He's not Stanton. Stanton is not Judge. They're not the same. Whether they have the same numbers on the field or not, they're not the same. Judge is the guy.
Yes, I know that. Last thing I want to talk about. Oh, go ahead, Logan.
So I did a little bit of deep diving about a Judge contract a little bit ago. So Judge will be 30 on April 26th. So Anthony Rendon, at around the same age, got 7 years for $245 million. It's $35 million a year. So you know that Judge is going to probably want equal to that, if not more. Judge is a better player when you look at their numbers pretty unequivocally. And they kind of both have injury history.
Yeah.
I think what they should do is they should basically do what the Red Sox did with Trevor Story, with that opt-in to the last 2 years, or he has an opt-out. I said, if he opts out, if they put an opt-out after the 20, or before give him a 8-year contract, but he has an opt-out after the second year, and then if he opts out, you can activate the last 2 years or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if the opt-outs were a little bit tricky. The difference with him though is because he is this franchise guy. I think calling it out in 2 years, it just doesn't make a ton of sense for either party. I would say.
You see that when a guy's
his payday
teams.
is now.
You see the opt-out early in the contract when someone's changing teams, because it's almost like security for them. It's like, if I freaking hate it, I can get out in 2 years. Judge knows if he's going to like it or not in New York. That's not an issue. So, yeah, I don't know. The contract is going to be interesting. I think if it goes to free agency, I think if they don't sign him to an extension, it's not going to happen. What's going to change over the course of the season that they're going to be like, oh, now we're willing to give him 7 or 8 years. You know what I mean?
That's the thing. If they go out, if he becomes a free agent and he's testing waters and he's going out there, if that is the case, someone's going to overpay for him. And I don't believe that the Yankees would overpay for him if they're up against an open market.
Right. So
and if Judge knows that, if that's part of his tactic and he knows that that's the case as well, then there's if he's banking on that, there's a very good chance that Aaron Judge is not on this team.
Logan says the Mets would overpay for Judge.
They would.
Heel turn of all time. Last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, the 10th inning ghost runner is coming back, baby. I know I'm in the minority, but I'm happy about it, okay? I think everyone just needs to admit to themselves that this is an exciting rule. Shut the hell up. It's not in the playoffs. No one wants it in the playoffs. But for the 162 regular season games, give me a freaking ghost runner so I don't have to watch guys try to hit solo home runs for 9 hours.
It's so stupid. It's so very dumb. And guess what? They can't hit singles or move guys over, so they're still going to try to hit solo home runs. So that's the flaw in your logic. The flaw in your logic
but games end sooner. This rule, more games have ended in the 10th inning than they did prior to this rule.
Because there's a phantom runner on second base. So dumb.
So things are happening. Things are movement. There's movement happening. It's exciting. We're wheeling and dealing. How about this?
Such a clown car
I was
move.
thinking about this. If the game was tied before the 7th inning, okay, and the score is the same, then you do the ghost runner in the 10th inning. If the game shifted hands and the score changed and it's tied between the 7th and the 9th inning, so one team came back or there was a back and forth, then you don't do the ghost runner.
That's even dumber.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because you're putting an arbitrary deadline of the 7th inning to be like, get in the game or like be part of the game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's stupid. Again,
I like that.
Now we're just playing another 7-inning game to like see what happens in the rest of them. So now you're gonna like make different choices to tie the game in the It's just dumb. It doesn't need to happen, and they're overextending. They're over indexing.
Teams like it. Teams
they are
like it
over
because it saves pitching.
Fine.
It saves pitching for teams, okay? It does.
Okay. It's here, so it is what it is, but it's dumb.
If a team
it's a slow pitch softball move. That's exactly what it is.
We've already watched two teams try and hit solo home runs from the 7th inning to the 9th inning, and they were unable to do that. I don't want to watch that from the 10th inning on. Give me the ghost runner in the 10th inning.
I would way prefer a home run derby to make to decide the game over
skills
a guy
competition.
On second base.
No, do all skills competition.
No, just a home run derby.
You do a
just
pitching competition.
Home run derby.
You do a defense
It's like a penalty
and
shot.
a home run derby. Yeah, fine. Everyone's. I mean, basically. I mean, NHL does penalty shots, right? Like.
But that's it. So you do a derby, and you're doing at least it's something different.
Are you doing the derby against batting practice?
Yeah, you have your own guy. Like Robbie Cano's dad comes out and pitches to him.
I would not hate that.
Okay? Mike Harkey might be like an MVP candidate because he throws phenomenal bullpen. You know, like you could have like your guy, and you're looking around for bullpen guys who can throw batting practice.
I think there's people who are afraid to get shamed on Twitter, and they're not admitting that they like this rule. But I like the rule because it adds excitement to otherwise mostly unexciting moments of baseball. Okay, the game 10 years ago was different. Now, the 10th inning rolls around, and guys just go up there trying to hit dingers. It's not exciting.
So guess what? When everybody's able to hit singles again, it's going to be so anticlimactic because it's going to be a little bleeder through the infield. A little bleeder through the infield wins the game, and it's going to be painful to lose those games.
There's 162 baseball games a year. Just like it's just get over it. Just get over it.
Just play the game normally. That's all. Is that too much to ask? Just like it's been played a certain way with the rules. Like just do that.
Things need to change. I'm not saying this is the best change they've ever made, but things need to change with this game of baseball. All right?
Okay. All right.
That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you have not done so, shoot us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you are listening on. Follow us on social media. Logan and Ilya have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to add new social media clips and different graphics and all that kind of stuff. Very excited for once the season gets going. We're going to ramp up our episode cadence. We're going to shoot for 3 episodes a week in the season. And we're also going to be doing the AL East Around the Horn previews leading up to opening day. So a lot of stuff coming here on this feed. Thanks guys so much. We'll talk to you next week.